Labor's front bench versus the government benches every day of the week. The truth is that Scott Morrison, I'm sure, struggled to find people to fill his cabinet positions and his out-of-ministry positions. The difficulty for Labor is how to make the most of the incredible talents and capacities of people on our front bench team and indeed throughout the entire caucus. This team has the talent and the experience to both hold the Morrison government to account, but also to ensure that we develop an alternative program to take to the next election in March 2022. It's a team where you have a number of people who with vast experience who've served in the cabinet before, but a refresh with new talent coming in. There will be 4 new members of my shadow cabinet. Senator Kristina Keneally will of course be Deputy Leader in the Senate, but will also fulfil the important positions of being Shadow Minister for Home Affairs as well as Shadow Minister for Immigration and Citizenship. She's joined by Senator Katie Gallagher, who will be Shadow Minister for Finance and Shadow Minister for the Public Service, an important role in our economic team, as well as being the Manager of Opposition Business in the Senate. Terry Butler from Queensland will be the Shadow Minister for the Environment and Water. And Madeleine King from Western Australia joins the Shadow Cabinet as the Shadow Minister for Trade in a major promotion which is most deserved. What that means when you look at our Shadow Cabinet lineup, together with other critical positions, including Richard Marles, who as well as being Deputy Leader, will be Shadow Minister for Defence, and Penny Wong as Leader in the Senate will be Shadow Minister for Foreign Affairs, is that it is a very strong team indeed. I want to particularly look towards the economic team that will be led by Jim Chalmers as the Shadow Treasurer from Queensland, as well as Katie Gallagher from the ACT, a former Chief Minister in the position of Finance. As well as that, we have a very strong economic team indeed. Brendan O'Connor will be the Shadow Minister for Employment and Industry, as well as for Science and Small and Family Business. The economic team that sometimes is forgotten by the government is, of course, infrastructure. Catherine King will be the Shadow Minister for Infrastructure, Transport and Regional Development, aided, of course, as well by Jason Clare, who'll be the Shadow Minister for Regional Services, Territories and Local Government, and the critical role of Shadow Minister for Housing and Homelessness. Andrew Giles, as an Outer Minister, will be Shadow Minister for Cities and Urban Infrastructure, making up the infrastructure team, along with Carol Brown, who will serve as the Shadow Assistant Minister for Infrastructure. Murray Watt will have particular responsibility as a new Shadow Minister for Northern Australia, as well as taking up responsibility for natural disaster and emergency management. And I'm very pleased that Stephen Jones will take the job of Shadow Assistant Treasurer as well as Shadow Minister for Financial Services, which with the Royal Commission will obviously play an important role. He'll be assisted by Matt Thistlethwaite in that role, and also Andrew Lee will continue his good work as part of the economic team as the Shadow Assistant Minister for Treasury and also for Charities. We have an outstanding team being put forward here. I'm very pleased that Chris Bowen, who asked to move to a social policy area, will be the Shadow Minister for Health. Chris is very excited about a new challenge for him, and I'm sure that he will fulfil that task with great credit to himself and to the party. Joel Fitzgibbon adds resources to his agricultural portfolio. It's essentially a move back to the primary industries portfolio that used to exist at the federal level. and Matt Keogh will give him particular support as the Minister for WA Resources. Linda Burney will be the Shadow Minister for Indigenous Australians, working with, of course, Pat Dodson as the Shadow Minister for Reconciliation, with particular responsibility for constitutional reform, and Warren Snowden, who will work in that area as well as across Northern Australia. I hope that Linda Burney can work closely with Ken Wyatt to advance the cause of First Nations peoples, along, of course, with the father of reconciliation, Pat Dodson, and Warren Snowden, who brings so much experience to the team. Mark Butler will continue in his role in climate change and energy. He has brought passion and commitment and rigour to that role. Bill Shorten will perform the role which I think he, above anyone else, is made for. He, of course, made such an impact on Australian politics with his work on the National Disability Insurance Scheme. He will hold the government to account and make sure that it is the people with disabilities who are at the centre of attention for that scheme as it is rolled out, as Shadow Minister at the NDIS, as well as Shadow Minister for Government Services, which is the old Human Services portfolio in which Prime Minister Morrison has made an announcement about the creation of Services Australia. Tanya Plibersek will continue as the Shadow Minister for Education and Training. Don Farrell will continue in his role as Special Shadow Minister for Special Minister of State, as well as Sport, but he adds to that Shadow Minister for Tourism, a portfolio close to my heart, and he will also assist me as Leader of the Opposition. Mark Dreyfus continues as Shadow Attorney General, but will add to that Shadow Minister for Constitutional Reform. There are a range of constitutional questions which we need to deal with. The issues of recognition of First Nations people, the necessary move at some stage that we will have to do to move to a republic with an Australian head of state. The issue of 4-year terms, local government constitutional recognition. There is a big agenda there that needs to be worked through. Mark has shown a capacity to work with people and bring people with him, and I'm sure that he will perform with distinction in that role.